Hello, everybody. Can you ladies all hear me?
Yeah.
How many have we got here? Lots of you here. 13. Lovely to see some of you I know. We will just give you one more minute to give people a chance to get in. Hope you're all having a good evening or morning. There are some of you here who I recognise, many of you who I don't. So I'm excited to get to know you a bit more today. But here, hey Janelle, hey Sally. Who else? Louise, I know we've been chatting. Hi Eileen, I know we've talked a bit before. Misty, it's lovely to have you here. And we've got Vanessa and Thea, Rachel. Rachel and I were just chatting yesterday. I might just mute because I think someone's walking. We said I'm about to get my girls. No, it's fine. Please don't apologise ever for dropping children to childcare and doing that juggle. That's why we're here. That's what we do. There's never any need to apologise. So you'll get the replay, Chloe. So if at any point, and I have no doubt that when you try and enter that childcare room, you will hear nothing of what I'm saying. So you'll get the replay to be able to watch back. But it's great to have you here. So we will jump into the training and start talking about what maybe isn't the most positive of topics, but I'm hoping that you will leave with a positive outlook on it. There we go. So you are in the right place today, ladies. If you're an ambitious practice owner with a team who doesn't want a recession to stand in the way of their goals, you are willing to roll up your sleeves and take action to recession-proof your practice. And if the traditional marketing and business advice out there feels out of alignment with how you want to do your business, and therefore often leaves you feeling stuck around, well, what the heck do I do now? Because I don't want to do the things you're telling me I need to. So there is, oh, we just jumped 2 slides there. There is trouble brewing. The Australian economists are saying that there is about a 50% chance of recession in the next 12 months here, and about a 35% chance of recession in the US. As I look at those of you that are here, it's a fairly even split between here in the US. Actually, if you just want to pop in the chat where you're from, what state you're from, and what country, that will really help me talk to it in more detail. But from the names I know, I think we have a fairly even split. But so we've got Canada, Melbourne, British Columbia, Illinois, Sydney. Yeah, so a fairly even split between them. So what actually is a recession? And I may be telling you things you already know, but I think it can be quite confusing sometimes, particularly across different places. So a recession is defined in the US as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy lasting more than a few months. But it does take into account factors like gross domestic product, real income, employment levels, and consumer spending in the way that it determines it in the US. So it is a more complex way that they decide whether the economy is in a recession, which is in contrast to Australia and the UK, where they're much more technical and black and white, and it is simply just 2 consecutive quarters where the gross domestic product, which is the amount of goods and services we produce in this country, decline after they've taken inflation into account. So it can be argued that the US definition is a better approach because it does take other factors into account. Particularly as this time, what we're looking at potentially is a recession where employment rates are really high. They're talking about it being like a job full recession in contrast to a jobless recession. But that in itself is kind of a new thing. Excuse me, ladies, I've got a funny throat this morning. In that normally recessions mean job contraction, spending contraction, high interest rates, high inflation. So all of that is to say is that even the economists, I think, are a little bit like, this is unusual. Ultimately, all that matters, recession or not, is the numbers in your business and what is going on in your practice. That's what we can control. That's what we can have an impact on. That's ultimately all that really matters to any of us in business anyway, because if our business is thriving as much as we feel for people whose businesses aren't, you know, that's what really matters, like keeping our own house in order. Okay. So I just want to talk about what does a recession actually mean for a private practice, because we can hear all the doom and gloom, and it can be very fearful, and that's what the media want, because then we consume more media trying to understand and to try and feel better, which they don't want us to do. But it doesn't actually tell us what that might mean for our practice. So I just want to run through what that might look like if we do go into recession. So the first thing is there's reduced access to finance. So lending institutions become more cautious, which results in limited access to capital for investing in your practice, which can obviously hinder growth opportunities, makes it difficult sometimes to upgrade equipment or to expand services. But it also means that overdrafts can become harder to come by. It can be more difficult to get lines of credit. If you want to take out a business loan, that can be more difficult. And so that often means that those credit cushions that people tap into when things aren't going well in strong economic times aren't always as available in difficult economic times, which makes the whole thing worse. Like if the situation is going south and you can't tap into any of the normal support you would, it just speeds up the pace at which things get hard. Okay. So that's the first way it's potentially going to impact you. The second is what I'm sure you're already feeling, is that operational costs increase. So rents have massively increased. Those of you that have mortgages on your clinics will have seen those obviously increase significantly. Anybody here already seeing that and that being difficult? Like, just pop in the chat if you are. It helps me understand where you're all at. You'll also be seeing the cost of consumables go up, electricity and heating costs in your clinic, the cost of petrol or gas in if those of you that do home visits, you'll be seeing that too, along with a number of other just general increases across expenses. And as I said, you guys will already be feeling that because inflation is so high across most of the developed world. The other thing that you'll see is changes in referral patterns. So doctors and specialists may refer fewer patients to allied health or prefer lower cost alternatives. And this shift in referrals can affect the patient flow and then obviously the revenues that come into the practice. We'll talk about that more often in a minute. But what you'll also likely see is that people you haven't actually developed strong relationships with, who refer to you and may have been doing so for months or even years, may stop referring to you if they don't understand the value that you bring, if potentially you're one of the higher fee rates in the area. And that kind of comes on to the next point, which is people start to look for increased cost efficiencies, and they really want to understand what the price to value ratio is. So if you have a clear value proposition and you're known for something, you're less likely to face pressure around reducing your prices because you've demonstrated the value that you provide and the effectiveness that is tied to that fee. It's really hard to justify that if you don't have a strong relationship with a referrer, because they don't know you. They don't know the philosophy of care in your practice. They don't know how you approach things. And it's much harder to justify that with someone you don't know than with someone who does already know you well and sees, you know, what you do. I'm just going to mute you guys a second. So all of that obviously leads to less clients in the marketplace. I'm saving the biggest concern till last. I'm sure that you guys all are having this running through your mind, like this is probably what you all are assuming is going to happen. The reason it happens is that you have less people with insurance in the US potentially if there's been redundancies, because oftentimes people's insurance is tied to their job, and if not, if they've been made redundant, that's going to be one of the cost savings potentially that they do in the short term, is to remove their insurance plan. In Australia, people will cut back on private health if they're made redundant, because it will be seen as something potentially that they don't need as much. There's less private pay people around. So in the US, if you've got a private pay business, people might tighten their belts and start to use their commercial insurance instead to make things financially easier. And in the US, it might be more difficult to get reimbursements. So, people might use services, then be made redundant, and there'd be difficulties then claiming that money through insurance companies, because they're like, well, the person's not employed anymore. Any other pressing concerns that you have about that might potentially happen as part of a recession? If you have anything I haven't covered here, pop it in the chat and I will keep it in mind as we go through and talk about some more of these challenges. Vanessa said, is this recession is a job plus one? Will people be losing their jobs and their benefits? Potentially not, Vanessa. So yeah, potentially not. Though I think even where they're saying that the recession may be a job for one, inevitably it will lead to job losses, because if people stop spending, they're stopping spending in businesses. And whilst that might not be impacting right now, it will impact in the future, because there's just less revenue going into businesses. Job redundancies are usually the last thing to happen, but they do happen, and for some of the reasons that we're going to talk about in here, because it doesn't always need to be a big contraction if businesses are running close to the line. We saw that in COVID, but I will talk a bit more to it. So I know this sounds really ominous, and I want you to know that the reason I've outlaid that is because I want it to be clear where the risks are, so that you can see how what we're going to cover this session helps and allows you to start to protect yourself from some of these things as we move forward. Because I want you, instead of laying there thinking at night, like, what happens if there's a recession? What will it mean? Will we lose the business? Will this happen? Will that happen? As our monkey minds love to do to us. I instead want you to leave today with a plan of what you need to work on right now, so that you're not waiting and seeing what happens. You're actioning stuff today to move your practice to a more stable and secure place, to protect yourself, your practice, your sanity, if we go into a recession. And then if we don't go into one, all that you have done is put things in place to improve the health of your business anyway. That's only going to be a positive thing. So if you haven't already, grab a notebook, because I want you to be taking notes about the things that we're talking about and starting to build out your plan of what you're going to be doing. Just before we get into all of the content that I'm going to share with you, I do just want to give you a bit of an overview of who I am. I know some of you, but I'm not going to give you my whole life story, but I think it's important that you know a bit about me to know how I'm positioned to talk to this topic. So my whole thing in life, my purpose, if you will, is to help women in private practice achieve exponential growth in a way that aligns with their feminine values and allows them to have success without sacrifice. Whether that sacrifice is time with their family, financial freedom, or just being able to live by their values and do business the way that they want. I think many of you have been following me for a while, so you know that this is something I'm passionate about. You probably know a bit of my story, but for those of you that don't, this is me back in 2019 after being made redundant when I was 34 weeks pregnant. I'd started my business in 2017 after having maternity leave with my eldest, who's here on the left. They are much older than this now. I had an 18-month-old on my hip, and I was trying to build a business. By 2019, we had I'm change this slide for you. We had our second little bub that you can see there, and she's 3 months old at this point. I naively thought that I could return to my business with 2 kids and just drop back into how it was. Those of you that have 2 kids will know that that is very naive, but we are naive as parents, right? having 2 kids in a business was a whole different ball game, and to say it was a juggle is an understatement. So I started to outsource some things where I could to bring support. Sorry, my husband completely threw me by bringing me a coffee in the workshop. I started to outsource some things to give me some time back, and I started to work around like my kids, so that I could have that balance that I wanted between being a mum and also running a business. But then in March 2020, COVID hit and things just went up another level. Luckily for me, my business started growing really rapidly. And by the next year, in theory, I was having great success. But I was a really long way from being the mum that I wanted to be. You know, I had grown the business, it was doubling in size every year. But the freedom and the flexibility that I started my business for were just gone. Like, I was working 40 hours a week, only 3 days in the office. And I just couldn't see how I could go from being at 500,000 turnover to 1 million turnover without there being some significant sacrifice on everyone's part. And that wasn't what I wanted. I built my business so that I could be the mum that I wanted to be, and, you know, take extended holidays with my family, and spend time with my kids, and be present for like first days at schools and play cafe trips on a Monday, and really have that time with my children when they were little that just goes so quickly. I wanted to be able to socialize with my friends and have meaningful relationships with other people, but I just didn't have any headspace or capacity to do that. And I really wanted to be there, to be present with my husband, who very kindly just interrupted my workshop with a coffee, and to give my marriage the time that it really desperately needed after welcoming a second child into it. But most importantly, like, I wanted to be able to help more women, and I could see the results that we were creating with the women we were helping at that point. And I knew I wanted to be able to help twice as many more. And I felt a responsibility to find a way to do that. And then, like most of you that I speak to, I had some really big financial goals. I wanted to buy my dream car. I wanted to build our dream house. But I couldn't see how that was going to be possible without working harder. And I just didn't have any more to give, which I know is really common with the other women I speak to. Most of all, though, I wanted to do my business my way, in a way that aligned with my values and how I wanted to show up in the world. And I really struggled to find anybody who understood that the way that women need to do business is really different to how men do business. We need to be doing daycare drop-off at 8:30 in the morning, because that's one of the things that we end up doing as women. And we have to build our business around that, not in spite of that. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to show you how to protect your practice from a recession, but I also want to show you how to do it in a way that aligns with your values. So it isn't just another workshop where you come and are given strategies that feel really off, and you walk away and think, well, that was a waste of time that I didn't have. So with that, I really want to get stuck into the content. If you have any questions as we go along, pop them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. And then we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. So, as I said earlier, the numbers that really matter are the ones in your business. So you are at greater risk of the impact, you are at greater risk of being impacted by a recession if you're currently not paying yourself a proper wage, which I know is really common for the women I speak with who are in private practice. You are living week to week or month to month in your practice, and cash flow is tight, and you have no financial safety cushion. So any reduction in clients is going to have a drastic impact on your ability to continue operating. If any of those things are true for you, your number one priority right now is to become cash flow positive and to build a financial buffer. So being cash flow positive is where more money comes in than goes out. We need there to be money in the bank and a financial cushion so that you have breathing room should there be a recession. It's also really important to be cash flow positive now, because if your business isn't working right now, it's not going to work any better in a recession. And going back to that point where I said, even if there's lots of people in jobs and there aren't a lot of redundancies, for many businesses, it doesn't take a lot of financial shock to push them over the edge. Like if 20% of your if your client numbers drop by 20% next month, could your practice survive that? If the answer is no, then you're in the right place, and we need to be working on the stuff that we're covering today to get you into a good position, whatever happens, right? Like, even if there isn't a recession, this is not sustainable. But if there is, it's going to potentially be the undoing of your business. And I just would hate that, because I know how hard you've worked to get where you are, and I know how much sacrifice has gone into it. And so I'm really focused today on helping you see where you need to improve. So there are 3 areas you need to focus on to protect your practice from a recession, or just generally grow and scale your business. The first of those is to have magnetic marketing in place. So I'm going to walk you through my 7-figure practice model, so you can see the key areas that I know make a difference in a practice. And then we're going to talk to how you need to improve in these areas to recession-proof your practice. So magnetic marketing is about pull, not push. So what I mean by that, it's about being nurturing in your marketing instead of trying to sell yourself. It's about being collaborative with other professionals instead of seeing them as competition. It's about having empathy in the way that you talk about what your clients are struggling with, so that you can position yourself as a person to help instead of trying to sell your services to them, which I know most of the women I talk to are just like, oh, it just feels awful. I can't go to another GP surgery and stand there and try and sell my practice. And the reason that this is so important is when you aren't in control of the referrals coming into your practice, because your marketing isn't working well, it removes your ability to be able to create financial stability, and also to have control over the number of referrals coming into your practice. I'm going to talk a bit more about that shortly. The second area is around having a thriving team. So we need to have a team who are inspired by our vision, who are wholly accountable for the part they play in it, and are invested in running the practice in a way that aligns with your values. Your team do not need to work for you. They're not there because you're paying their salary. They could literally go out tomorrow and find 5 practices around you, contact them and say, pay me $10,000 more than I'm being paid now. And they would probably have 3 of them say, sure, let's go, because it's so hard to find team right now. Your team will stay with you, and they will be a thriving team if you nurture them and have a collaborative relationship with them, and you bring them along with your vision. You use your vision to inspire them. You show them that they are part of something bigger. That is what will keep your team with you. It's what will keep them pulling in the same direction with you. It will remove the constant spot fire putting out often. It reduces performance management issues normally, because you know then that that person's not the right person, instead of it being that the team's not thriving. And it just allows you more time and headspace to focus on what the business needs to grow. Like, the thing I commonly hear is like, if I didn't have to hire people, having a business would be great. That just tells me that the team is not working well. So the third, I've just realized I wasn't changing this. Sorry, ladies. The third area is around having scalable systems. So scalable systems ensure you have a life outside your practice, that you aren't the bottleneck for everything, and that ultimately you can step out of the practice and have a baby, go away for 6 weeks, do any of those things that possibly feel impossible to you right now. Systems are the things that allow you to do that. And I know that systems can feel very masculine sometimes, and that we sometimes struggle to put them in place because it can be a different way of thinking. But when the systems are in place, that is what lets you be in flow. It allows you to trust your intuition because you know that things are working well. It allows you to step into more of that feminine approach to being in business, instead of running around like a headless chicken, exhausting yourself. And when the systems aren't working properly, that's when you can't step out of the practice for any period of time. If the thought of going on holiday for 2 weeks fills you with anxiety, you've got a problem with your systems. If going away for a month to 6 weeks or having a baby feels like it is out of the realms of possibility, then systems is definitely an area you need to be focusing on. And so then just really briefly, when we have really great magnetic marketing and we have scalable systems, we can have reliable growth. When we have business freedom and when we have a thriving team and scalable systems, we get business freedom because we can be in our practice less because there's less fires to put out, things are running smoothly. When we have a thriving team and magnetic marketing, we have engaged clients who tell people about us and have a great experience at our practice and get great outcomes. When you have all three, that's when you get success without having sacrifice. And so how this can show up, and I'd love to hear which one of these resonates most for you. When we have scalable systems and good marketing, you will become overworked. You'll have too many referrals coming in, too many clients on your plate. Even with the best systems in the world, you're going to be working 40+ hours a week because there just isn't enough people in your team, or your team aren't seeing enough clients to make that any better. If you have a great team and great systems, but you don't have great marketing, you become overstretched financially because your team aren't making enough money because there aren't enough clients. So you're constantly trying to top up the revenue in the practice by working more, by seeing more clients. But it doesn't always work because there's only so much of you to go around, and one person can't top up 4 people being at 60%. If you have a great team and great marketing, but you don't have great systems, you will become overwhelmed because you will be the bottleneck for everything, as we just discussed. And you will feel completely tied to the practice. I hear this described as having golden handcuffs. I had 2 clients describe it to me like that. They're like, we make great money in the practice. The team are doing really well, but we work 60 hours a week. So it's like having a set of golden handcuffs. Like, yeah, we're making great money, but the sacrifice is massive. And I'll tell you a bit more about those 2 ladies shortly. So just pop in the chat, which of those would you say is most resonant for you as to where you're at the moment? Do you feel overstretched? Do you feel overworked? Do you feel overwhelmed? Give you a second to do that. Jane's overworked. Overwhelmed, overworked, overworked, overwhelmed. Stretched, overstretched. Sometimes all, sometimes more, none. Yeah. And that's a bit of a thing of being in business. I was talking to a client yesterday, Thea, about this, that it constantly changes because, you know, you might focus on your team and then they're doing really well and they're you don't feel overwhelmed anymore, but then you might become overworked because you need more systems and processes in place because they're asking for more systems and processes. So you can kind of move around between them, but ultimately we want to try and keep you in the middle. So let's get to how we can do that. Why is this now not going through? There we go. So we're going to start with magnetic marketing. The number one mistake that I see practice owners make when it comes to marketing is that they just don't do any. So who here has had their practice grow to this point with very little structured marketing? Just comment in the chat and let me know. There's no judgment because we have been in a boom economy for years. So there has been, the market's been awash with clients, and there's been more clients to go around than there are services. That's why we have so many wait lists. The problem with word of mouth is that you have no control over it. And where that becomes a problem in a recession is that the number of potential clients in the marketplace, let's say the number of potential clients in the marketplace drops by 25% because there's been redundancies, some people are tightening their belts, some people are prioritizing their escalating mortgage costs. If you don't have a strategy around generating referrals into your practice, what that's going to mean is you just see a 25% drop in the number of people coming into your practice. and you probably won't see it coming. It will just suddenly happen, and it will take you weeks, if not months, to get it back to where it was. And you're going to be in full scramble panic mode, because if you haven't done marketing before, you're like, I don't know what to do now. Meanwhile, your revenue's taking a hit, and that's not a fun place to be. And I want to just give this a bit more context as to why this is important now. If your team currently sit at 80% capacity, so they're not full, and I just want to talk to this because as kids, we were constantly told, got 80% in a test. That's amazing. Well done. Awesome. Getting 80%. Great. When it comes to your team, 80% is not where we want to be. That's not a gold tick. That's not at capacity. And where this becomes a real issue is then if you have 10 to 15% cancellations, which is kind of industry standard, that means your team are actually only completing 65 to 70% billable sessions each week of what they're capable of. If you reduce that by another 25%, you're not even going to break even on their wages. So now you can see why, if you're only just getting by at the moment, a recession is going to be really, really tricky to navigate if client numbers do drop off. So how do you market to fill your practice in a way that aligns with your feminine values? Because what I hear so often is that the reason that most women don't market is because everything they've been told about how to market their practice just feels awful. And they avoid it like the plague because they just, I don't want to do those things. It's not in line with how I want to show up in the world. It's not how I want my business to be seen. We're doing okay. We're growing on word of mouth. I'll just do nothing. And that's been okay. But even if you're sitting at 80% and we don't have a recession, that 70, if they're at 70%, that 30% of revenue that is being missed every single week is where your profit is. That is where your cushion is. That is where you get out of going week to week, month to month. It doesn't have to be like this. You just need to focus on filling the team. So how do you go about doing that? The first step is to help your team get clarity. So it's imperative in a recession that you stand out. You cannot be a generalist because you're just in the same bucket as everyone else. If you are a specialist, and Rachel, she's still here, I think, is a great example. So Rachel is a therapist who just works with people who have pain conditions. And even more specifically, like if she had her way, she would only see people with complex, it's regional pain syndrome, isn't it? She would only see those people. But come a recession, Rachel wouldn't see a drop off in her clients because there is so many of those clients that need help. And people know that that's exactly what Rachel does. She would continue to get enough of those clients to fill her caseload. If Rachel was just a run-of-the-mill musculoskeletal physio that didn't have any focus on even any types of specific client groups in that, she would really, really struggle because she's just in with the masses of other physiotherapists trying to get clients. So the second step, any questions on that before I move on? So the second step is around creating collaboration. So you want to create strong referral partnerships that ensure you consistently receive those ideal client referrals. So instead of like those masculine approaches of going out and trying to sell yourself to local GP surgeries or writing social media content to shout about how great you are, neither of which works, as I'm sure you know, the thing to focus on is about building authentic relationships and a community around your practice in a systematic way. So most of you will have done this in an ad hoc way. You'll have referral partnerships. There'll be people who refer to you, but you won't have done it in a methodical and a consistent way. And you probably can't scale it as you would like to. So even if you're doing this at the moment, if I said, right, I want you to double the amount of new clients coming into your practice in the next 60 days, you wouldn't probably know how to go about doing that. But by building a systematic approach around building collaborative relationships and expanding the amount of those relationships your practice has, therefore building community around you, you start to be able to have the ability to forecast the number of referrals that are coming in and know exactly who your referral partners are so that you can build really strong relationships with them. So that as those referral patterns potentially change in a recession, yours don't, because you've proved your value. Your referral partners know why you're the person they should be sending their clients to. And you really are evidencing what makes you different and why you should still be their choice. The third step is around having constant connection. So staying in touch with referral partners in an authentic way, keeping you top of mind with minimal effort. So this is about building trust and value and rapport over time, so that you're ensuring that you are still the one that referrer thinks of when people come to them, and that they continue to refer those clients out to you, because those relationships are being maintained over time in an authentic way that keeps you top of mind. So when you have consistent referrals coming into your practice, your team will stay full, even in a recession. And a full team means increased revenue, increased profit, and that financial security that we're seeking. So I just want to quickly talk through an example here with you. And these were the ladies I was talking about earlier with the golden handcuffs. So Susan and Carla had a really successful business on paper. They were making $1 million a year, but they were working evenings, weekends. They were doing massive weeks. And like I said, they referred to their practice as being like a set of golden handcuffs. We implemented my abundant referral system in their practice, and without any new team members, they grew their revenue by 50% in 6 months. So they went from being at $85,000 a month to $130,000 a month in 6 months. And they went from working 60-hour weeks to 30-hour weeks, and finally having time to launch their passion project of an online course. Doesn't need to be that you have more team, because I know that team is tricky right now. It's just about maximizing the opportunity you currently have. So I'd really like you to just take a second, if you can, if you have this available to you, to think about the number of empty sessions in your practice last week, and to then multiply that by your team's average session rate. If this is hard to do now, just take a screenshot maybe and go away and do it later today. And then when you have that number, to multiply that by 48 weeks, assuming that you bill people for 48 weeks. It might be 50 weeks in the US because people take less leave. That number is the additional revenue you could be making right now if your team were at full capacity. If you can work that number out now, I would love for you to type it in the chat. But know that I have seen everything from $100,000 in the smallest cases up to over $1 million in the largest cases. It will be eye-opening, and potentially probably be a firecracker up your bum. But if you can work that out now, that's great. If not, I do really encourage you to go and have a look at that today, because that is the difference between being cash flow positive and not. It's the difference between having a financial cushion and not. And this is something that you can be working on right now to improve the health of your practice. So if we now move to systems, operational effectiveness is so important in a recession. We don't want to be spending any more money than we need to. We want the team working as effectively as possible. We want to be negotiating vendor contracts within our systems and technologies and other things that we use to make sure that everything is working to its optimum, so that we are not spending any more money than we need to be, but also our patients and clients are getting a really great experience. So the number one mistake that I see people make when it comes to scalable systems that will kill your cash flow in a recession is that they bring on more team to make up for inefficiency. So now is not, unless you're busting at the seams, now is not the time to be taking on new team members to make up for the fact that existing team members are not completing what you think they should. So if your clinical team are not working at capacity, you don't need another clinician, you just need to fill the team you've got. If your admin team are not getting done what you believe they should be able to, it's not about bringing someone else on to try and help with the work. It's about implementing things now to make that work more effectively. So I talk about this concept of having the right people in the right seats. This is about working with your team to identify where their strengths lie and to redevelop their job descriptions to reflect those strengths, so that you're not having people do things that they're not good at, so that they don't produce a good result, but also they take a really long time to complete them. We all know what it's like when we're trying to do something that we don't really know how to do that well, or we're not that good at. We take twice as long, if not 3 times as long, as someone who's really good at it. And what I see happen is that you'll take on an admin and they have this job role, and then you expand and you take on another one and they have this job role, and maybe you have a third one who has another job role. But in that, they're doing tasks that aren't to their strengths, and there's another person in the team who's much better at it. The first thing is to get everybody working to their strengths so that they are more efficient and effective in your business. That will reduce how much wasted time is happening and will free up their ability to do more. The second piece then to look at is around improving delegation within the team. You want to reduce double handling and double checking as much as possible, because again, that's just sucking time up. And it happens if there aren't, if the delegation of the task is not clear in the first place, if there are not checks and balances where it's easy to see if something's been done. So if it's all done on email and it's being held in someone's head, and they're having to go and check if things have been done and having to read through email chains or asking people, it's just wasted effort and wasted time that you want to be saving in order to maximize how you can use your existing team. The final piece around this is around using automation. So I'm not talking here about automating things so that you don't need team members, but I see so many things being done manually that don't need to be done manually, simply because no one has put the time or thought into how it might be automated. So spreadsheets, holding client information, or callbacks being done, and everybody's got to try and figure out where they are in the spreadsheet and where the clients are. Look at systems to automate these things, improve processes to reduce the double handling that's going on, and where you can, put in systems in place to remove the need, full stop. So a great one is like having 48-hour reminders go out to people that ask them to confirm they're coming. Then you only need to call people who haven't confirmed they're coming. That will massively reduce the cancellation rate and therefore reduces the callbacks that have to happen. It just compresses the amount of time being used on tasks and allows you to maximize the effectiveness of your team. And so an example here that I want to share with you is a lady called Sarah. So Sarah was homeschooling her kids. She had 3. She had a partner working 10-hour days in a corporate job. She had no time and she had no headspace. She improved her systems. She added automation where that was possible. She had her team working to their strengths, so they were much more efficient. It gave her the capacity to be able to open a brand new clinic in another city, which she filled to capacity in less than a year. That then allowed her to retire her husband from his corporate job and brought him into their business 3 years earlier than like what they'd called a pipe dream timeline. Like they wanted to do it, but I don't even think they believed it was possible. And now, 2 years later on from this, Sarah's just hit $1 million turnover. She's tripled the size of her practice in the last 3 years. And they took 6 weeks off last summer to go away as a family and travel around their state and the neighboring states. And the practice ran just fine without them. So really optimizing your team and the way that your systems work will have a massive impact on your practice right now, but it will also allow your team to work more effectively and will save you from adding in another salary at a time when other expenses are increasing and is really the last thing you need. So last but not least, looking at having a thriving team. This isn't the only mistake I see people make, but I think it's the most common mistake that women make in practice. And it is probably the one that they are least supported in more masculine focused programs to resolve. And it's around not knowing where the boundary is between caring and being a walkover. Anybody here ever feel like that is tricky to navigate? Like you want to be caring with your team and compassionate, but that it's really hard for that not to be taken advantage of, and knowing where that line is between, not being a walkover, but also not being in that having that super masculine approach of being like authoritarian and data driven and analytics, etc., etc. Let me know in the chat if that's something you found tricky. So how do you go about building a supportive team culture, and why is this important in a recession? So if we're going to approach our business from a feminine approach, we are naturally going to be nurturing and empathetic and compassionate. And we're going to know that this is a really hard time for our team. Like, even if things are going well in your practice, it doesn't mean things are going well for their partner's business or the company they work for. They're going to potentially be under quite a lot of stress. So acknowledging that, like, your team, watch the news, don't pretend the situation isn't happening. Instead, have open conversations, allow them to know that this is a space where they are going to be supported. You obviously don't want this to turn into a whinge fest, which is that line between being a walkover and being caring. But how you can go about doing that is just having those open conversations and having transparent communication channels within the workplace, so that people feel that they are having space held for them and that they are being supported. So regular team meetings is a great way to do this if you don't already have team meetings. One-on-one check-ins, anonymous suggestion boxes, they all will foster a communication of open dialogue. The second step is reassurance. So fostering a culture of support, encouraging teamwork, collaboration, will all help your team feel more reassured in their role. But the best thing you can do for your team is to be able to be transparent with them about your financial health. Now, obviously, the business needs to be in financial health to be able to share with them, it's okay, we're doing well, everything's good, you don't need to worry here, your role is safe, we are okay. Obviously, you need to be able to say that with authentically. So we do want to get the business to a place where it's like that. But there's nothing more reassuring than your boss saying, I know it's stressful out there, but you don't need to worry about here. Everything's good. Sharing your plans for managing the recession. So I would highly encourage you, as you leave this meeting today, to figure out how in your next team meeting you will share what you're going to be doing with your team to recession-proof the practice. As an employee, to know that your owner has thought about this and is making plans is going to be really reassuring. It's going to help them feel a little bit easier that things are going to be okay. That will massively reduce your team's mental health challenges. It will allow them to feel like they are being supported. That will allow them to show up better at work, provide the quality of care that you want them to provide without being caught up in this whirlwind of panic that things are going to go wrong. So, having that culture of support, compassion, empathy, encouraging self-care, encouraging a healthy work-life balance. You obviously need to have a healthy work-life balance in order to encourage that with your team. So lead by example, get the systems in place so that you can reduce your workload and evidence that to the team. This is what healthy work-life balance looks like. You need to encourage self-care, take your own self-care, create this environment of support so that they feel held and they feel like things are going to be okay. That will allow them to show up well in your business and continue to thrive as a team, even if we do go into a recession. What's good about this particularly, because I know that this is a different viewpoint to often what is spoken about around like building a thriving team. Often it's around like have KPIs, focus on performance, blah, blah, blah. What's good about thinking about it in this way instead? Put it in the chat if you have thoughts. And so just to give you an example of how this can play out, Kieran is a beautiful client I worked with who was ready to quit her practice, walk out. She said she had a team member that wasn't working, but she couldn't figure out why. She had tried to implement strict KPIs to increase performance. And if anything, it had made the culture worse. I don't know if anybody else has experienced this. But I said, I have to leave. I'm now wondering if I need him since my team is not capacity. Good thing to consider, Vanessa, though I would never walk away from a great therapist, because you can fill your team quite quickly and then you're going to need somebody. And Rachel said, happy supported employees will thrive organically. 100%, because they're bought into your vision I know we spoke about this yesterday, they're bought into showing up for you because they feel supported. They will thrive. So Kieran wanted, where's this now? I'm not doing this. 1 second, ladies. Ooh, it's got enthusiastic. She wanted to have a team that felt supported and engaged with the business. And Rachel, like Rachel was saying, she wanted them to thrive so that in turn she and the business was able to thrive too. And she tried, doing that with poking a stick, and it just didn't work. As women know, generally doesn't work for us. So Kieran grew her revenue by 50% while she was pregnant. She created an amazing team culture, developed a practice manager that could hold the fort while she was gone, and took 6 months out of her practice. And the practice grew while she was away because her team drove her vision without her there, because they were bought into what she was trying to achieve. And I want you to know that you can achieve results like the ladies I've shared today in as little as 2 hours a week. The most common question that I get asked, and Sally, literally, we just spoke about this, is I don't have that much time. What if I don't have time to give to this? You can do it in as little as 2 hours a week if you are very focused on what you're doing and you're doing the things that make the biggest difference and working smarter, not harder. Do not spend your 2 hours of the week writing social media posts, because they do nothing for 90% of practices. Spend your time supporting your team to build their network. Spend your time developing systems around delegation so that you are being drawn less into those things and the team is becoming more effective. Spend your time developing a culture with your team where they are pulling in the same direction as you because they want to, not because you're trying to force them to. Because if you take one thing from today, whether we have a recession or not, now is really not the time to sit on the fence and hope that things will be okay. Because your practice doing well will depend on you taking action fast, even if there's not a recession, right? Like if you're just breaking even in your practice and not paying yourself at least what your best clinician is being paid, but it should be more, then now is the time to be fixing that anyway, let alone if a recession comes or not. We're not in business to run a charity. We're in business because we wanted freedom, time, and the flexibility. 90% of the women I speak to do not have those things. What we've talked about today will give you the freedom, flexibility, financial flexibility, and time to do the things that you want to do. But they will also ensure that if a recession does come, you're ready. Because there will be opportunities everywhere if there is a recession. We've discussed that some people are not across this stuff in their business. Their practices will go under. We saw that in COVID. There were practices that closed because they just couldn't handle that 10%, 15% drop off in clients. Their staff will need new jobs. You may be one of the rare people that has no problems finding staff. That's what I was just saying to Vanessa, but that is not generally the case. It is generally really hard to find good therapists. There will be therapists that no longer have jobs that you will have the opportunity to offer roles to. As those practices close or people seek to reduce their expenses because their cash flow is so tight, more commercial properties will become available, and sometimes at really good rates. Sometimes properties are repossessed and then sold and they're ready to go as a practice. I want you to be in a position to be able to capitalize on those opportunities. I want you to have the headspace and the financial means to say, cool, I'm going to go with that, instead of laying in bed at night frantically worrying how you're going to make payroll. And all you need to be able to do that is to have a plan so you know where to focus to maximize your effort. And then having support around you so that you don't get stuck. So if that's something you need help with, and you're in a position right now where you're like, I want things to change, recession or not. I love what you said, Sian. It makes so much sense, but I am overwhelmed with how I go about starting to do that. I just want to share with you briefly an opportunity to work with me and over 100 other practice owners who are going through my Success Without Sacrifice program. They are working on those 3 areas around marketing, thriving team, and scalable systems, so that they can have that sweet spot in the middle of Success Without Sacrifice and $1 million practice to boot with it. So if that's something you would like to know more about, We have an in-depth curriculum that works alongside the program so that you don't have any of the trial and error of trying to figure out how to get results fast. There is one-to-one coaching from me, so you always have an expert in your corner if we do have a recession and things go south. There's 4 powerful group coaching calls each month, so you're never far away from support. You have a personal financial success strategist there to help you create your financial cushion. There's unlimited, what we call boost calls with me for when the poo hits the fan and you're like, Sian, I don't know what to do right now. I do some of those each week because I know if someone's stuck and I get on the phone with them, I can get them unstuck very quickly and moving forward. And that's what we want for you. And then finally, that community of like-minded practice owners. And this is one of the most powerful things I think that the program provides people who join us, is that these are like-minded women who are growing their practice in a way that is aligned with the feminine way. They're not hustling, they're not striving, they're not trying to boost their ego by telling you how great their practice is or how many new locations they're opening, or how I saw something this week that was like a picture and it was like the 4 best minds in the field in one room. There wasn't any women in there in the picture. It's women lifting other women up and supporting them so that we can all thrive together. I truly believe in that. A rising tide lifts all boats, and that is what this community is about. So if that's something that you would like to know more about, it is by application. You can either email me or the team or pop me a message on Facebook if you'd like to know more. I'd love to welcome some of you in to start to implement some of these things so that, recession or not, your practice grows really profitably and gives you those things that you were looking for when you started it. So I will now open the floor up to you ladies. Just going to stop my share. Any questions, ladies? What was good about what we spoke about today? Rachel's got the whole family there today. I love it. This is how we do, ladies. This is how we do. We have breastfeeding going on in coaching calls. We have kids reading books. This is how we do in Success Without Sacrifice. But any questions on anything I covered, I'm more than happy to answer anything. I know we're on time now, but if you have questions, I'm happy to stay. If you guys are happy to stay and ask. Rachel said, so has one earphone and she's going to be the next boss. Good. Well, she's learning some really valuable information right now. Feel free to like open up your mic. Eileen, I think I can see you typing, but you're welcome just to open your mic up if that's easier. Oh, I might need to. Oh, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Eileen. We can't hear you. I've completely forgotten how to say your name, which is very shameful given we both have Welsh names. While Eileen sorts out her
Caridwen.
Hate butchering names. Caridwen. I was going to say that. Caridwen. Yes, 100%. So we have, I think Janelle might have jumped off, but Janelle, who was here with us earlier, her husband is her business partner. How we work that is that they work through the program content together, and he has access to everything. Only Janelle jumps on the calls because we are very mindful of that energy in the calls. But yeah, absolutely, our one-to-one calls that we do, they're both there. Brady and Janelle were both on the call.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. We do work with that. We even actually have one guy in the program at the moment who we are navigating, because obviously he's not on any of the calls, but he was like, I really want to work with you. How can we make this work? And I was like, okay, well, here's what we can do. I can do the one-to-one calls with you, and his wife does the marketing, and he has a female practice manager, so they jump on the coaching calls and we just do one-to-one work together. And so yeah, absolutely, we can make it work. Eileen, did you put your question in here? I think I saw. Would you oh no, it wasn't. It sounds like really organized on what I'm currently doing. That's okay. Do you mean as in it's a bit ad hoc what's going on for you at the moment, Eileen? I know this is tricky because we're having to type back. We said you've given me some great focus points. Awesome. Yes. Yeah, and it is nothing I teach, I think, in the program is rocket science, but it's simple and it's broken down and it's implementable and there is a structure to it. So it gives you focus of like, do this, then do this, then do this. And it's very personalized. So actually that's something to talk about, in that a lot of programs, and I've been through a lot of coaching programs and know this to be true too, is here's the content, you're going to get one video a week and you have to work through them. But what if that video has no relevance to where you are in your business right now? So what we do in Success Without Sacrifice, Eileen, is we look at where your business is at right now and where you need to focus. And then we give you your first 90-day plan to get you off and running of what you need to work on. And then we review it. So it's constantly a bespoke plan. It's not a one size fits all. My hairbrushes. I love getting my hair brushed too. I wish that was me. Thea said, thank you for this. I have to figure out the magnetic marketing more. I think my brain is scrambled from a full day right now, but that's where we'll try to learn more and do more. Really appreciate all the info. Cool. Thea, are you still here? If you want to have a chat about that, one of the things that we do, and Sally and Rachel have just done this with me this week, is that we can jump on a call and work through that model with you and have you do an individualized assessment so we can identify exactly where in that you need to be focused, and then from that have a clear plan around what your next steps are. So if you would like to see if that's possible, then reach out to the team or myself and we will see if we can get that sorted out for you. Yeah, exactly. And it's so frustrating because let's say that you have an absolutely ram-packed team and you don't need to be doing marketing, but 90% of the people I work with do need to be doing marketing. Well, I don't want to force you to watch all those marketing modules before you get to anything that's of value for you, not least because it's just going to overwhelm you with the things that you're not doing that you don't actually need to be doing because your team are full, but now I've told you about and put in your head you feel like you should be doing, right? Doesn't make any sense. So we don't do it like that. If you'd like to have a chat about what it would look like for you, we can certainly arrange a call and have you go through the assessment too. Any other questions on the content? Was it helpful, ladies? What was the biggest takeaway for you all before we wrap up? I'm going to pop it in the chat or jump on even if you feel comfortable to. I think you're all typing. Those of you here at the start, I will be having words with my husband, as nice as the coffee is, for interrupting my workshop. He knew I was doing. I don't know what he was thinking. But to be honest, like that, this is an outcome of us focusing on our marriage, of like having the time and headspace to be like, what do you need? What do I need? One of the things I told him I needed was for him to feel like he was for him to be doing things that showed me he was thinking of me. That's why he randomly brings me coffee. But it came from us being in a place like mentally and emotionally where we could actually have a conversation at Christmas time. Like, what would this look like if we were going to make it better? Like, where are my needs not being met? Where are your needs not being met? So I won't tell him off too much. I'll just try and cut it out of the recording and the bit where it totally threw me. Naomi said niching, filling the books, validating my intuition, 100% Rachel. So a bit around marketing to shore up the referral base. Happy that someone has a good and structured plan for our practices. Humanistic touch with team motivation. Yeah. It's, I know, in stark contrast, and it is only one of the things to focus on with your team should there be a recession. But the reason I really wanted to focus on it is because it's such a feminine challenge that I don't see men in private practice talk about having, and I do work with a couple of them and they just don't have it. Like, it's very black and white for them more often than not. Not that the masculine and feminine is a gender related thing, but we do tend to be more predominantly in the energy that relates to our gender. But it's just not a thing for them. They're just like, well, that's how it is. Why do you use the example from the client I'm working with, who's guy, he had one of his staff that was at a course and was like, I'm really not coping. I don't know if I can finish the course. Then her sister went into hospital that night and she just unraveled. And he was like, I just don't understand it. Like, her sister's sick. What's the problem? Like, I can see she's overwhelmed and she's obviously got some mental health stuff going on, but you know, what? And I was like, as a sister, that would massively throw you if your sister went into hospital, in a way that it probably wouldn't for a guy, maybe if their brother went into hospital. And he just couldn't quite get it. And so I really wanted to talk to that point, because it is different and it is important, because it can go the other way. And the challenge I more often see women struggle with is like, my team, I feel like my team are walking all over me because I'm trying to be nice and I'm trying to do the right thing and I'm trying to look after them, but now they're just taking advantage. So finding that sweet spot, which is so important but is a more feminine thing, is something that I think is really important to having a thriving team and a thriving business. So I really wanted to touch on it. I'm glad that was helpful for you. Any last questions or points? Nah, someone just got a morning kiss. Anything else, ladies, before we wrap up? I am so grateful for having so many of you here. It has been lovely to see some new faces, to see some faces I've seen before. So yeah, really great to be with you. Really great to share this information with you. And hopefully you're all leaving being like, okay, cool. This doesn't have to be this heavy weight on me. I can start doing something today, so that even if that does come 6 months down the track, I'm good. Is that how everyone's leaving? Hopefully no one's leaving like, oh my God, now I feel more overwhelmed than I did at the beginning. Chloe said, thanks. Yeah, cool. Definitely watch it back, Chloe, because trying to consume information during daycare drop-off is challenging, even for us women who can multitask. All right, ladies, well, I will love you all and leave you all. The recording will be coming out to you later today or tomorrow morning for those of you that are in the US. If you would like to have a chat, you can reply to any of the emails and the team will support you with a link to be able to do that. If you would like to apply for Success Without Sacrifice, you can do that too. Just let the team know and we will give you a short form to fill in to make sure that it is going to be the best use of your time and financial resources. So thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you all, and I will hopefully speak to some of you again soon. Bye, ladies.